Within the realm of cybersecurity, open source intelligence is focused around threats, vulnerabilities, security issues that a traditional organization would want to know about to defend their infrastructure, computer systems, employees. In classical intelligence agencies, you have interceptive signals, radio signals, used to be called back in World War II era, and that form of intelligence was called signals intelligence, or SIGINT. And then you had intelligence gathered from human assets that spies would coerce to get them to give up enemy secrets, and that was referred to as human intelligence, or HUMINT for short. OSINT is a category of intelligence gathered across internet-based sources. So any intel derived or sourced from any publicly available website that does not require some sort of authentication to get access to, or you could find this out anywhere by just searching for the right keywords using Google, that's deemed open source intelligence. The types of intelligence that qualify as open source intelligence varies depending upon what your job function is. So from a non-cybersecurity background, intelligence agencies would use the internet to monitor for things that happen in the world that they wouldn't be able to access otherwise. For example, let's say hypothetically Google allowed street view cameras through the streets of Pyongyang, North Korea. I'm sure there are elements of the CIA that would love to know what the current shops are over in North Korea. So they might use Google Street View cameras to gain access to that information, and they would quantify that as OSINT. But that's not really in the realm of cybersecurity. So within the realm of cybersecurity, open source intelligence is really focused around information about threats, vulnerabilities, security issues that a traditional organization would want to know about to defend their infrastructure, computer systems, employees. When we talk about subcategories of OSINT, one of them is vulnerabilities. So anytime there's a mention of a new vulnerability that's either been discovered by security researchers or discovered in the wild because of some attack a adversary was successfully using to breach another organization. That's the type of information that a lot of cybersecurity experts find valuable, mainly because they wanted to figure out, well, what are the mitigations? What are the fixes? What are the right ways to defend against this particular issue? And then another category of open source intelligence beyond vulnerabilities is considered malware intelligence. It's not necessarily a vulnerability, but rather the next step once a threat gains access to an organization is they deploy tools. They deploy remote access tools, Trojans, viruses. Now it's all been deemed in the category of malware. But these are tools that a typical threat group would use to maintain access into the victim organization. So if they can't necessarily detect the exploit or the vulnerability that's been used, they'd at least want to know, well, what are the tools that the adversary uses to maintain persistence and ultimately move laterally and steal data from an organization. So that's malware intelligence. The third type of open source intelligence people value is what's typically referred to as threat actor intelligence. So this is different than just the standard terminology of threat intelligence, but it's information about who is conducting these sorts of attacks, not just who they are, where they're located, but what are their motivations? What are their goals? What are their objectives? The idea behind this is that you can kind of build out a probability of whether or not this particular group is going to go after your organization or not, depending on the industry that you're in, where you are, what your supply chain is. All these are big factors as to whether or not a particular threat group will go after your organization. Some threat groups are pretty much mission focused on very specific industry verticals. And then there are other threat groups that are opportunistic. They'll go after any target. It's just a matter of whether or not your security is the weakest out there. To sum up, in terms of OSINT, there's vulnerabilities, malware, and then threat actor information. Those are kind of the three major buckets. There is no clearinghouse for everything. People have tried, but it is so fluid that every attempt is met with many limitations. It requires a community to be able to keep track of this. The biggest challenge is that you have to know anywhere from 1,000 to 10,000 unique sources on the internet that perpetually change. They'll evolve, they'll grow, some of them will get aged out, new sources will come up. It's a constant game of trying to figure out where the new information is located. It's not like there's just 3 different media outlets and they tell you everything you need to know about cybersecurity. There's probably like 20 major media outlets, but then there's thousands of individual researcher blogs that are talking about the cutting edge stuff. If you want the information as fast as possible, you have to go to the individual sources where cybersecurity journalists also go to when they report on the news.